Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So today I thought I would do another BTS behind the scenes type video, but in an effort to keep things fresh, instead of just doing the usual walk around and video of the actual shoot, which you can see on multiple videos I've done in the past, I thought I would share maybe like 3 things that I do during a shoot that help me get the best results for my clients. One being a thing that I can do as a photographer, moving around. The second thing that I'll talk about is something I do to direct my subject in front of my camera to kind of help get some more dynamic results. And the last thing would be something I do with my camera to change things up if I need to, based off of who is in front of my camera. So hopefully you'll find at least one of these that might help you out in a future shoot of yours. All right, so last week, I believe it was, I had a shoot with the softball team over at the University of South Carolina. Kind of walk you through the set a little bit there. Used 6 lights, and once again, I used the Westcott FJ400s, and these lights have been working great. And one of my favorite things about them is the battery capacity. I believe I had around a little over 1,800 exposures. And I think I just changed like 3 batteries. They weren't all the way dead. They were like halfway, but I changed out only 3 of the 6 lights during that shoot. So that kind of takes the weight off when I don't have to worry about the battery power going down on my strobes during a shoot. So, that's a big advantage to having such a large capacity battery on a strobe like this. So along with the FJ400s, I went back to the Canon R5 for this shoot, and I used the 24-70 f2.8 for all the shots you see here. And with the 24-70, I'm shooting at all different ranges because I'm shooting full body shots as well as getting in tight for some tight portrait style shots as well at like 70 millimeters. And that's the reason why this 24-70 is just one of my favorite all-around lenses for these types of shoots. Another lens I do like a lot is the 24-105. It gives me actually even a little more range. It's an f4, but in these photo shoots like this, I am not going below usually 5.6, so well within that range, and it just depends on if I want to mix it up or not. So those are 2 fantastic lenses for these types of shoots. Okay, the first thing I thought I would share is something that I do sometimes during a shoot, and it kind of occurred to me while I was doing it. Is once I see a nice pose for my subject, I will sometimes get up and change my angle and move side to side from my subject. So I'll show some frames from the shoot so you can see kind of what it was looking like straight on the camera. And then what I'll do is move forward and then move to either angle, depending on what is going on. And that doesn't change the lighting on my subject, but it just changes the angle of the camera. And so it gives a whole different kind of feel sometimes to the images. And it's just such a really easy thing to do. But sometimes I feel like, we kind of get set in position. I'm guilty of this too. And we don't make use of that. You see something that's working, and then you might have your subject, have them turn. But sometimes I've found it's better for me to get up and actually do the movings where they can hold something and I don't have to direct them more than I need to. All right, while I was editing this video, I kind of felt like I might have undersold this technique a little bit. So I wanted to drop some more behind the scenes footage. And this is from a recent photo shoot I did with the Naval Academy's uniform for the Army-Navy game. I'll link this video in case you want to see more from this shoot. But this is just more of a visual representation of what I'm talking about, how I get up and change my angles and recompose shots in the camera so we get some really more unique images than me just being static behind the camera. And now we will return to our regularly scheduled programming. Secondly, kind of falls along in the directing area, and it's simply to have your subject look off camera. Once again, kind of going back to where you kind of get settled in your location, I think your subject, if you're not directing them, the tendency, I think, for all of us is to kind of look at the camera. And that's great for a lot of the pictures, and a lot of those are what people use. But try and mix things up sometimes. Have your subject look off camera, and I'll show some examples, and they can totally give a different sense of emotion for that image or certain image, and even more of, I would say, maybe like a candid feel instead of like a shot on studio type thing. If you kind of think to if you're photographing like a sporting event, the athlete on the field is not looking at your camera during a sporting event. You're just photographing them doing what they're doing. So I feel like having them on set, I'm obviously controlling the lighting, but that is just a great opportunity to take that step toward it being more of a candid type shot, to where they just aren't totally directed into the lens of the camera, and having them look down and then off camera, that type of thing. You just can get all kinds of different emotions and different images that can be purposed for different things. Third and final thing is what I'll do sometimes in these shoots, like I had last week with the team. They will use different uniforms, so they want to show off all the different uniforms they wear during a season. Some of them being white uniforms and some of them being black uniforms in this case. And so that, along with different changes in skin tones, I will sometimes need to change things up in my camera, especially if I know that I'm not going to be in charge of retouching these images before they're used out in the wild, and someone might not take the time to adjust the exposure of different images based off of someone's skin tone or someone's jersey color. And the best and easiest way that I've found, especially in this era of digital mirrorless cameras, is to change just the ISO. You can tick up the ISO for your darker skin tones, your darker uniforms, and I'll show some examples. And it doesn't take much. So I would go, I think for this example I'm showing, went from 100 ISO to like 160, and it was just enough to kind of add in some detail into that uniform and then bring up the skin tones where they needed to be. And on the Canon R5, I've just got this dial back here on the back of the camera, and so what I'll do is if I see something, a darker uniform, darker skin tone, or vice versa, lighter, so I'll adjust it based off of what I'm seeing exposure-wise on my computer, which I've usually got tethered there. And so just a couple of ticks, and that'll help the end result, and I won't have to worry about that in the future when they're using those images, and probably not retouching each and every one of them. One key on that, though, is just to remember to set it back. If if the dark uniform goes off and then someone in a white uniform comes on, you want to make sure that you dial that back, in this case to 100 ISO, to bring that back into, register into the correct exposure. And just in talking with these digital cameras, you always want to expose for the highlights. You can always bring up the details in the shadows, unless you're way, way off. But if you clip those highlights, that is just something that you can't get back, even with raw file, if you're several stops over. So I go back to the film days, and it was the exact opposite, where you would have to expose for the shadows. But this day and age, you expose for the highlights, and you're in good shape. All right, so those are 3 quick tips, which I hope, as I mentioned earlier, one of them at least can help you out in the future. So if you feel like this video was worthy, please give it that thumbs up. For more content just like this, hit that subscribe button down there, as I try to make videos as often as I can. Being that I am a commercial photographer who's working, that has a YouTube channel, and so when work is really busy, it makes it hard to get in front of the camera, but I'm always trying to share knowledge here. So hit that subscribe button if you want to see more content like this. And you can also find me on social media at QuantsPhoto on Instagram and Twitter. Y'all, please stay safe and healthy out there, and I should be here soon again in the next one.